Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our speaker today is Mr. Shuaib Syed. Mr. Shuaib is originally from Pietermaritzburg but has spent most of his life in Cape Town. He holds a journalism degree from the Rhodes University in Cape Town and a master's in political science from UNISA. He has served as a journalist at the Natal Witness and the Daily News. He has been the editor of the New Africa Independent Press and also the station manager of Radio Tukai in Cape Town. He is currently the station manager of Radio 1584 and his topic today is the importance of alternative media. Shukran for the introduction, Shamil. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic I am discussing today is alternative media in Islam. Recently, and when I mean recently, I'm talking about the past 50 years, Islam has been given a very bad image in mainstream media in terms of we are being considered as a group of or a sect of violent people. We are being considered as being barbaric. The barbarism is being compared to modern society. Good example of that would be a recent event that happened in Woolwich in London, where there was a beheading by two Nigerian brothers who did not belong to a specific group. Yet the beheading was carried out in public. When the beheading was carried out, Western media ascribed that beheading to Islam. Now, in the alternative media, if one were to have read about the beheading, one would find that alternative media, as in not your mainstream media, media that's not being propagated by Americans or the Jews, you would find that the real story behind the story was there. We had two Nigerians who conducted the beheading based on their political ethos. They had their own agenda and it had nothing to do with Islam. Now, that is the most recent event that we are looking at. I came across a very interesting article yesterday while I was researching alternative media in Islam. And most of the countries around the world, people live in a so-called democracy. And when I mean so-called democracy, if we were to look at the Greek definition of democracy, it means a government for the people, by the people. Yet in the democratic countries, the government is never ever selected by the people or governed by the people. So in a country like the United States, who purports to be democratic, who purports not to allow hate speech or not to be xenophobic against their fellow Americans, this is what was there, I quote, "In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man. Support Israel, defeat jihad." That's the direct quotation. Now you may wonder, where would we find this quotation? On the internet, in some magazine, or in a newspaper? Never. This quotation that purports religious hate mongering is actually on the subway in New York. It's on a billboard. It's on New York buses. Now, although the New York transport authorities don't want pieces of this propaganda to continue, they cannot do anything effective in terms of Muslims being labeled as savages, or they cannot stop people from displaying these images on their property. This advert, of course, was paid by the Jewish League, and America, who considers themselves to be wholly democratic, goes on to say it is their right to express themselves. Now, this is mainstream media. Mainstream media basically has been brainwashing people for hundreds of years. And a good example of that would be starting in World War II, when the Nazis used propaganda and media. They were the most effective media machine in World War II, when they needed to propagate their beliefs and their belief system. Every single incident that has happened in the last 30 years, whether it's a bombing, an example would be the Oklahoma City bombing. The Oklahoma City bombing occurred, hundreds of people were injured, people were dead. Immediately they ascribed it to any Islamic group, be it from Sudan, be it from Afghanistan, be it from Iran, etc. After doing their investigations, they then realized it was not a Muslim group that carried out the bombing, but the bombing was rather carried out by their very own citizen, born and bred in America, and they labeled him as a redneck, meaning he is like one of the lowest forms in American society, and he was Timothy McVeigh. Now, in alternative media, stuff that's not CNN or Al Jazeera or BBC or Chinese television network, etc., one would find the other side of the coin. As you know, there's always two sides of a coin. There's two sides of a story. But in mainstream media, that is not being portrayed. All we are having is just one side, and the one side of the story is that Muslim and Islam purports to be this type of religion. If one were to do a survey, maybe in South Africa, and if the survey was done regarding Indians, and then if you were to narrow it down regarding Muslims, the simple fact is, if one were to narrow it down, people have preconceived notions of what Muslims are, or who we are, and what we stand for. They don't understand our belief system. They associate us with the negative. And the negative would be an example. If you mention Indian, Muslim, immediately someone would mention Shabir Sheikh, Jacob Zuma. That is the immediate mindset. We're talking about normal South African Muslims. I wouldn't use the word uneducated, because that is a Western philosophy. If you don't agree, or if you cannot read English, they say that you are illiterate. Illiterate does not mean you cannot read in English. Illiterate means you cannot read, period, in any language. So if we were to speak to people at the grassroots level and say, okay, fine, here's a what do you understand by someone being Indian, and what do you understand by someone being Muslim? And immediately, like I said, it will conjure up the image of Shabir Sheikh, Jacob Zuma. And then they would associate us and take it further and associate us with fraud. So that's a label that has been created by mainstream media. And this labeling has been going on for the past 40, 50 years. Alternative media seeks to put an end to what mainstream media is putting out there. And we live in an age of technology. Newspaper, internet, radio, television, satellite television. And if you watch or read the same thing over and over, it's easy for them to propagate their agenda on you. It is easy for their mandates to be put on you. For the masses out there to have this mindset, and after that they would look at one particular race with tunnel vision. Another good example would be, after World War II, there was a good propaganda campaign regarding the Holocaust. If one were to speak against the Holocaust, or say, you know, I have a different view regarding the Holocaust, then everyone would be up in arms. Currently, Islam has a war that's being waged on them, like I said, for the last 30 to 40 years. And the current situation is, we have Syria. Syria is currently being run by Bashir al-Assad. In the last 2 days, the G8 summit in Scotland, where it's being held, you had Obama together with the British Prime Minister that says, we need to start supporting the rebels together with Israel. Now, even if we do not agree with al-Assad's rule, at the end of the day, if we were to support the rebels, and I know there's Muslims in the country that does support the rebels, we inadvertently are supporting America. Not only that, we are supporting the Jews. And that is a fact. Again, Bashir al-Assad's reign and rule, every single thing that has happened since the time of him taking power, right up till now, has been looked through the eyes of the Western world. Whether we agree with his rule or not, the point is, at the end of the day, if Israel is supporting the rebels, and if America is supporting the rebels, are we going to give our support to both Israel and America, whether it's direct or indirect? And that's what it's tantamount to today. Again, if mainstream media compared to alternative media. In the mainstream media, if you were to mention Imam Khomeini, or if you were to mention Muammar Gaddafi, the immediate image that's formed in the Western mind is violence, oppression, lack of freedom of speech, etc. And at the end of the day, is that the true image of Gaddafi as well as Khomeini? I've selected those two because those were the only two leaders that comes to mind that have stood up against Western rule or Western domination. As much as Muammar Gaddafi was dethroned and ultimately killed, at the end of the day, he stood up against American incursions in his country. Unlike, if we do a comparison, would be Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, in his early rule, Western media made him out to be a good leader, a just leader, for one simple reason. He was fighting against the war in Afghanistan and in Russia. He had soldiers there and there were incursions going in. When he bit the hand that fed him, as they say, America then decided, when he attacked Kuwait, let's at the end of the day now make him out to be the evil guy, the fall guy. And this image is conjured up not only there, not only in your mainstream media, but also in movies. In movies, you would also always have the Arabs as, or the Muslim as the bad guy. That is mainstream media. Alternative media, you would have, there's an interesting webpage called Cage Prisoners. I've been visiting Cage Prisoners quite often. Cage Prisoners is run by a former Guantanamo Bay detainee. His name is Muazzim Beg. Now, Muazzim Beg created this webpage where every single day he gives an update regarding what's happening in Guantanamo Bay. He has put videos on where people that were released in Guantanamo Bay talks about the conditions that they have experienced in Guantanamo Bay, as well as in secret camps out in Europe. It's out there for everyone to see. If you were to look at his article and his videos and then go on to the New York Times reporting on the same event on the same day, you would get two different stories regarding what's happening. Recently, as 2 weeks ago, we had Barack Obama saying that he's going to close down Guantanamo Bay. They're reaching the final stages of it. If one were to cast their mind back, exactly on his first term, his first day in office, he says, we shall withdraw people out of Iraq, That will happen in the next 12 months. We shall have our troops withdrawn out of Afghanistan, and we shall close down Guantanamo Bay. I do not agree with it. I feel it violates human rights. Almost 8 years has passed and nothing has come to pass in terms of Barack Obama's reign. Now, that is mainstream media, and then mainstream media justifies why he feels that Guantanamo Bay needs to be open and there is a direct threat from the Islamic world and we need to have these brothers locked up. About 2 weeks ago, I did an interview on radio where a former guard in Guantanamo Bay, this guard grew up in South Carolina. He belonged to a group of bikers. He goes on to explain about 60% of his body is covered in tattoos. And he was a guard at Guantanamo Bay. So, you get this redneck from America. I don't like the term, but that's how he describes himself. So you get this redneck from America that's now in Guantanamo Bay. He is a guard there, and he is guarding the prisoners at night. And at night, in their cells, all they are allowed is, at certain times, their Quran and maybe just water. The living conditions is atrocious. It actually breaches the Geneva Convention, but we'll talk about that on another day. Now, being there, he was told on his first night, please be careful. These guys are psychopaths. They are brutal and they are violent. And on his first night, he did not hear a single peep coming out of the cells. As he walked past in the cells, all he saw was men with long beards reading their Quran. He did that. He was on night shift for approximately 2 weeks. And that's when he started talking to the prisoners and he started befriending them. Only to realize that the prisoners that are there were doctors, teachers, lawyers, normal people. People that had nothing to do with the so-called violence, or people that had nothing to do with bombings, or they weren't jihadists as Western media made them out to be. He takes it even further. He then starts finding out as to how long they have been there. He spoke to one brother that told him, I've been there since I was 16 years old, and now he's about 26 or 27. After being at Guantanamo Bay for approximately 2 to 3 months, he then returned back to America on leave, and when he went back to America, he vowed never to return. And what he did do perplexed his entire family, and it perplexed his community at large. He went on to accept Islam. If one were to go onto YouTube, you would see him on YouTube, and for the past 5 years, he has practiced Deen religiously. He has went around the world, he has given lectures, he has went back to Guantanamo Bay, and he has started a group that wants the prisoners to be freed from Guantanamo Bay. Now that is the side of the media, the side of Islam that the media would not ever report. If one were to look at, let's take an example, okay, there's another example. A comedian called Russell Peters, born in Canada, and his comedy is very, very tongue-in-cheek. He talks about the Arabs, and he talks about the Jews, and he says whenever the media shows or depicts pictures of Arabs on television or Muslims on television, it's either regarding violence, it's regarding being aggressive. And he says the type of aggression, if you were to, or if the media were to interview a Muslim that speaks Arabic, the Arabic comes out very guttural and violent. Now that is the image that the world has of us. Now that is your mainstream media. And he says, in Canada, this is how people think Arabic is. It's like when people talk Japanese, it's fast, it's rapid, and it sounds as if it's short bursts of gunfire. That is how he equated Arabic in the Western world and their perception to Arabic as to how people normally speak Arabic in Arabic-speaking countries. Yeah, this was my point. Now, The media in modern day can be regarded as an instrument of war or as an instrument of peace. I'm sure everyone here has come across the idiom, the pen is mightier than a sword. Throughout history, by a mere stroke of the pen, wars were either started or ended. By the same virtue, we have now a war that's being waged between your mainstream media and your alternative media. And what is happening is, alternative media is now taking the forefront for one simple reason. People are tired of mainstream media where if you go on the internet and you type in 10 different daily newspapers around the world, they more or less carry the same story. And people are tired of that regurgitation of that same story. And if you were to type an alternative newspaper, an alternative media forum, they would then find there is a different viewpoint regarding that. Now, the myths and allegations reported daily in the print and visual media, what the brain interprets is, according to us, the reality. If you see something and hear something constantly, you become subtly brainwashed. The media also defines our vision of the world. One last thought I want to leave with you. In South Africa, the definition of defamation is, if I were to defame someone by calling them a derogatory name, the definition according to law is you are reduced in the eyes of right-thinking men. So if I were to call someone out there a dog, every other person in this masjid today would think that that person is a dog. Now, every single day, Islam is being defamed in mainstream media. And yet, at the end of the day, the masses have failed to rebut that defamation that's out there. Shukran for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, there will be a short program in this masjid on Sunday for Laylatul Barah. Azan is at 7 p.m. We humbly request people to attend the program as not to leave this masjid empty. Also, all graveyard lights will be switched on this night. Jazakallah.